Hey everybody, it's me, Steve Schnee, and you are watching the CD Junkie. I want to talk about Echo and the Bunnymen. I've wanted to talk about Echo and the Bunnymen for a long time, so I'm going to right now on this episode. A Liverpool post-punk band. Oh my goodness, how did I get into Echo and the Bunnymen? Essentially, I was listening to Rodney on the Rock, which is a popular radio show here in Southern California on KROQ. And he would play punk, post-punk. You know, that's the first time I heard Blondie and Devo and all these other great bands, Ramones. So he played this song called Villiers Terrace. And I was like, whoa, what the heck is this? So it must have been 79, 80, somewhere around there. The group was formed by singer Ian McCulloch. Now, he had been in a band called the Crucial Three that lasted about 16 hours or 3 days or 8 days or something like that. And that band was Pete Wiley, who went off to form the group Wah. And you can see a video that I covered Wah on this channel. Julian Cope, The Teardrop Explodes. And you can see a video where I covered their music. And then now I'm covering Ian McCulloch. They were the Crucial Three, and they lasted just couple days. I didn't really hear Echo and the Bunnymen until their debut album Crocodiles, 1980. This was just pure post-punk with psychedelic edges, and it was a very different sounding album than a lot of the stuff I've been listening to before, but it still had the great melodies which I love. So Ian McCulloch on vocals, you had Will Sargent on guitar and other instruments, you had Les Pattinson on bass, and you had Pete DeFreitas on drums. And these four guys just created this thunderous, rumbling, great post-punk sound. Crocodiles was a great album full of great songs. Now, their next album sort of put me off a little bit. Heaven Up Here, I know it's a lot of people's favorites, but back then, you know, I'm a pop kid. So the first thing I'm hearing is melodies. Heaven Up Here was an album that didn't have a whole lot of hooks like the debut album. Now, in time, of course, listening to it, it revealed itself to me. And I feel that the album is a little darker and not as melodic, but it's still as intense and as satisfying. But for years, I mean, it took me literally years to get into Heaven Up Here because to me, it was just kind of a... People have called them goth. It's definitely not goth, but it's darker than a lot of the other stuff I was listening to. That album came out in 1981. In 1983, they put out an album called Porcupine, and they sort of upped the pop ante a little bit. So they were playing more pop music, and so, you know, people were really getting into that album. And then by 1984, they put out Ocean Rain. Now, Ocean Rain was probably their creative high point, their commercial high point. This was an album that was so much more depth, and it showed their maturity. It showed what this band was capable of. They were taking their psychedelic and their post-punk influences, but they were also adding classical influences, and the melodies were fantastic. And this is the album that kind of put them over the top. K-Rock played a lot of songs off this album, and I'm sorry I keep mentioning K-Rock, but, you know, of course, I'm from Southern California. You know, you might be from England or from New York, but I'm sharing my experiences, and maybe they're similar to what happened in your city. But, of course, you know, I was buying these albums and just, wow, this is, you know, really fantastic. The next album was Songs to Learn and Sing, which was a compilation. And they had a song called Bring on the Dancing Horses, which is just great pop music. It wasn't trying to be anything but pop music. In 1987, they put out their self-titled album, and this was a very commercial release. It was catchier than, you know, on first listen than most of their other stuff, but it had Lips Like Sugar, had Bedbugs and Ballyhoo. Really strong album. And then singer Ian McCulloch left, and they decided to bring in a new vocalist, Noel Burke, to replace Ian. Now, Ian went off and recorded some really good solo albums, but in 1989, drummer Pete DeFreitas died in a motorcycle accident, which, of course, shook everybody to the core, but Will Sargent and Les Pattinson decided to continue with Echo and the Bunnymen, along with their new member, Noel Burke, and they recorded an album called Reverberation. and that came out in 1990. Sounds like a logical progression musically, and Noel Burke's voice wasn't completely dissimilar to Ian McCulloch, but there's something about chemistry. Now, the loss of Pete, of course, is huge, and they can never bring him back. Ian McCulloch leaving, the way I compare it is kind of like Coke and New Coke. Remember, there was a big thing where they came out with New Coke because they changed the formula, they changed the chemistry per se, and nobody wanted the New Coke. Everybody wanted the old Coke. Well, unfortunately, nobody wanted the new Echo and the Bunnymen. They wanted the old Echo and the Bunnymen. I don't mean that to be mean-spirited. I actually like Reverberation, the album they put out in 1990. Unfortunately, by 1993, Echo and the Bunnymen split. And because I don't think a lot of people were, able to accept Noel replacing Ian. So with Echo and the Bunnymen gone by 1993, somewhere along the line, Will Sargent and Ian McCulloch started talking again, and by 1995 they formed a band called Electrafiction. It was a trio, and Electrafiction released an album called Burned in 1995. This was a heavier sounding band. This was in the middle of grunge, and it wasn't grunge. Of course, Ian's voice is very familiar, and him and Will writing the songs together. There were hints of Echo and the Bunnymen there, but it wasn't Echo and the Bunnymen. But they changed that shortly after. I think Electrafiction did pretty well, but Will and Ian decided to reform Echo and the Bunnymen. And with that happening, they were able to coax Les Pattinson, the bass player, back, and the three original members continued with, new studio and live musicians filling out the sound. 1997, they put out an album called Evergreen, which is fabulous. It was that Echo and the Bunnymen sound, but there was much more depth, more maturity. It was really, really a fantastic return. And then, unfortunately, Les Pattinson left, but Will Sargent and Ian McCulloch continued with an album called What Are You Gonna Do With Your Life that came out in 1999. Les plays on one song, I believe, on the album, or maybe one of the bonus tracks that's on the 2 CD set. But really, those two albums are such a maturity, such much more depth and emotion, and really, really fantastic. But after Les left, and those two albums were on a major label, then they decided to take the indie route. And they released a series of independent albums that had that warm, deep sound, just really, really fantastic. Flowers came out in 2001. Siberia came out in 2005. The Fountain came out in 2009. And Meteorites came out in 2014. Now, they did put out another album in 2018 called The Stars, the Ocean, and the Moon. But this was not new material. It was then transformed versions of some of their back catalog. Really wonderful album. They still continue to play live to this day. Of course, still, it's Ian McCulloch and Will Sargent with their band. And I'm hoping that we're going to see some new material, but in this day and age, you never know. The world has changed and the music industry's changed. We can only hope to get new material from Echo and the Bunnymen. But in the meantime, there's been reissues and box sets and vinyl reissues and colored vinyl reissues and all this kind of stuff going on. Now let's listen to the music of Echo and the Bunnymen. Put this medley together. I hope you enjoy it. Sit back, relax, give it a listen, and I will see you on the other side.
You come on down to my, won't you come on down to my rescue? through the thick and thin. He will wait until you give yourself to him. First I'm gonna make it, and then I'm gonna break it till it falls apart. Hating all the breaking and shaking while I'm breaking your brittle heart. Lips like sugar, sugar kisses. Lips like sugar, sugar kisses. I will be, I won't be frightened. I will be enlightened. Forgive and stay with me. Stay with me, yeah. Stay with me. Stay with me, yeah. Don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down. When the moon and the stars go crashing round, don't let it get you down. So get in the car, we're taking a ride. We're looking for stars, we're looking for satellites. Get in the car, we're taking a ride. Give me the star, I'll be a satellite. Love it when you say I'm the gold inside your gold mine. And I love the way you just make me shine. Make me shine. You want it, you got it. There's nothing chained down. You need it, I'll steal it. Just put your name down. I'll put my name down. You know who I am. But you know what I've got. But you know who I am. 'Cause I know what you got. Is this a breakdown? Is this a breakdown? I don't think so. 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 No. Down your knees again, saying please again. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Kangaroo, chipmunk, chipmunk, kangaroo, ballyhoo and bedbugs, bedbugs and ballyhoo. That's we the bee bumbugs, we the bee bumbugs, we the bee.
Well, that's it. I hope that this inspires you to check out the music of Echo and the Bunnymen. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, or ring that bell for future notifications. And until the next time, remember me. I'm Steve Schnee, the CD Junkie.